after a long summer of waiting, deliberating, analyzing what would happen, the 2021 Emmy Award ceremony finally was tonight. It, no, we want to talk about sports still.
Yeah, I think I'd rather talk about sports.
All right, I
I'd
mean,
rather talk
Ted
about it
Lasso
too.
did pretty well, but whatever. I guess let's talk about,
Actually, I haven't watched Ted Lasso. By the way, you say it wrong. It's Lasso.
uh, we live in America. We definitely don't say that.
You live in America.
But yeah,
You definitely say that.
like the Emmys are in America. So, all right, fine. Talk about football.
Yeah. The other football, anyway.
Just came off the high that was the Chiefs Ravens round 4. Lamar Jackson finally, figuring out Patrick Mahomes, sort of. Break the leg, redeeming himself in SoFi Stadium. What else? I mean, there's what's his name? Trevor Lawrence throwing a couple picks.
Yeah, he had kind of a meltdown there, didn't he? I mean, Joe Burrow, too. I mean, Burrow threw what, like 3 INTs on 3 pass attempts?
3 in a row.
Yeah. I mean, that's just. I mean, I'd love to say it's absurd, but it's happened 1 or 2 times before, but it's always funny when it does. I mean, I could stand there and be like, oh, he's a great young talent. He's just growing pains, but I gotta say, I don't think it does him any good to throw those picks, and I think that if he could take them back, he would. It's not like, oh, good, that's part of his growth. Part of his growth is just being really bad at football.
I mean, yeah, that just kind of happens. I mean, when was that when we saw a rookie just come out, guns a-blazing and just, perfect from there on out? Rarely ever happens. I mean, even Peyton Manning threw 28 his first year in the league.
Yeah,
being top 3 quarterback of all time. It's just a part of the growing pains.
Yeah, I mean, I respect it, and I know that he's essentially still a rookie at this point because he missed most of his rookie season because of that injury.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he still doesn't have a great amount of time on the field, and I'm a massive advocate for giving rookie quarterbacks, especially, as much time as you can for them to develop. I mean, you never know when a guy will take that next step, but and I think the Burrow still got it, but performances like these aren't encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's indicative of significant traits, and unless he's able to correct those traits, it's going to be his downfall. I mean, how many great quarterbacks, coming out of college have we seen who do zero development as soon as after they arrive in the NFL? I mean, guys who are the number 1, number 3, number 5 overall picks consistently bust out because they get to the NFL and don't adapt that game in any way. And I don't want to see that from Burrow, but that wasn't ideal. That was definitely not his best.
Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Let's flip it over to Chicago, though, who has Justin Fields waiting in the wings, fans clamoring for him, Andy Dalton taking up space, it seems like. Fields gets a shot, doesn't make the most of it, but he's played, meaningful time in a game that they wound up losing. But does Matt Nagy have to stay with Fields now? Or if Dalton's ready to go week 3, is he the guy?
I mean, Chicago won that game 20-17. Fields didn't really do what they needed to win, but he did show that he's willing to make the mistakes. I think that's something that I can respect out of an actual rookie a little more. He's not afraid to sling it. He makes the plays with his legs when he has to, but he doesn't rely on them. There's a lot of encouraging stuff from Fields. But the Bears, I think, are still deluding themselves in that they're trying to compete this season. And until they're ready to let go of that, then they're going to. There's still always going to be a case for Andy Dalton as their starting quarterback, because Dalton is, I think unequivocally, the better quarterback as of now. It's just they're more about giving Fields time on the field to develop. But if he develops in the wrong thing, he solidifies the wrong traits, and might be worse long term. But I personally would have benched Dalton and started this season with Fields and kept him out there, because we know Dalton's not the future. Fields might be. Make him work.
So how I feel about it, I would personally just play him because, obviously he hasn't played in the, in the first. Well, he played in the first game, but he didn't really get the reps. So, like I said, I would have played him because what's the point of trading up for him, giving up assets just to not play him? I mean, let's just say it doesn't necessarily work out, going forward. At least you can say that you tried by you kind of babying him and kind of having him quote unquote sit and ride the bench and I guess kind of earn his stripes behind Andy Dalton, who I don't really think is all that good to begin with. This doesn't really make any sense because you've seen it work both ways where a guy has sat and ended up playing eventually and it still didn't work out, or you had a guy that came out directly and it still didn't work out. I would just play him. I think he's way more skilled than Dalton, and I think he'll end up getting it going forward. But I don't really see the point in not playing him. Just let him go through the growing pains, and he'll eventually get there.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they're trying to compete for the division right now. There's no way they can edge out teams like Green Bay or even Minnesota, I'd say. But I'm not entirely convinced that they know that yet. So until they do, I think it's a moot point.
A lot of close games today. A lot of games came down to who had the ball last. In a few upsets, which game had the most surprising result?
I mean, I'd love to say Chiefs Ravens, but we all know what Lamar can do when he's working with a substandard secondary and defensive ends who just can't actually grab him. So I'd say my biggest, my most surprising upset of the day might be Titans over Seahawks because there's more because of how they looked at nearing the end of the fourth quarter. Seattle was dominating. They were essentially their defense was making all kinds of plays against Tennessee, and they were letting Derrick Henry run all over you. But everyone knows that if you just let them run all over you but beat them in the passing areas, then you'll consistently win games anyway. But the fact that Seattle just kind of they emptied the mag into their own foot near the end of the game. Any given opportunity to make a significant mistake that would cost them the game is one that they took, and it's shocking. I mean, it seemed like every snap they did whatever they could to make things easier on Tennessee, and they just bled it all away. But I'd love to say that this Raiders-Steelers game, that was an upset for me. I mean, where did this Vegas team come from? Now that they're just playing one of the best games in the early windows of week 2, beating Baltimore in prime time in week 1. Like, what are they going to do next?
Probably lose by 30. I mean, that's just how they go.
Oh, I wouldn't worry about it. They play Miami in week 3.
So my answer would probably be between the Miami and Buffalo game and the Saints and Panthers game. Not necessarily who won, but how it happened. It's like, okay, I picked Buffalo to beat Miami. I know I know you're welcome. I know you really have too much going for you as a Bills fan, so I thought I should at least give you that. So
got it.
I don't think Tua is all that good of a quarterback right now, and I've seen the offense struggle with him in. But even with him going out, I didn't feel like there was too much of a drop off with a veteran and Jacoby Brissett. I know they weren't, going to score 30 points like Buffalo did, but for them to not put up a single point, that's kind of surprising. And also from the Saints part, I know Green Bay kind of tanked, I guess. Not tanked, but they literally played the worst possible game that they could have played last week. And to see what New Orleans came out and what they didn't do today, only scoring 6 points. I know Carolina, they lost a lot of one possession games last year. And if you take some of those games and it goes the other way, they're potentially a playoff team. So it's not like Carolina has not been a bad. I mean, it's not been a pretty solid team. They just got a lot of bad breaks, and you see in the second year under Matt Rule how much they've stepped up so far. And I know they've only played the Jets in week 1. I have to get you two, Stevens. The Jets suck. So, yeah, just surprising on how little they were able to do from the Saints' point of view is really surprising as well, especially from what I saw them do last week.
Yeah, last week they just carved up a great defense. This week they put up 7 points against the Panthers, who have arguably the weakest secondary in the NFL. I mean, outside of what I think J.C. Horn they picked up in the first round this year. Outside of him, they don't really have any major talents.
Yep.
In the secondary, I mean, I think Jeremy Chin is a pretty good safety, the rookie from last season.
Yeah,
but I mean,
they were talking about.
Yeah, that's it. That's all they got. I mean, any mediocre passing game in the NFL, especially a guy with as much passing experience as famous Jameis Winston, should have taken advantage. And the fact that they didn't is indicative of poor things to come. But I was quite pleasantly surprised with that Panthers offense. They were so balanced. They managed to they found a way to make Sam Darnold work efficiently in the pocket. I mean, he's not going to be out there getting MVP votes, but he can manage this offense well enough to get them to some wins on the back of a great front seven. Yep. And talented playmakers around him. I mean, when it comes down to it, he's got one of the most talented running backs in the game in CMC. He already had that chemistry with Robbie Anderson from their time together in New York. I mean, I think there's plenty of reasons why this Panthers team could succeed. And you're right, Deonta. They lost some game. I think it's 7 games last year, by like 3 points or less, and like 2 of them were missed field goals, and there's a lot of coin flip type of stuff that could have gone their way that would have won them the extra 2 games I think that they needed to get into the playoffs. So I mean, this could very well be a playoff contending Panthers team, not necessarily a championship contending team, and especially not coming out of the NFC the way they are, but there's potential there, and I think they could be a team to keep your eye on. They could upset a major team. They could lose to a small team. They're just right there.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah. I do want to. I'm sorry, Steven. I got to comment on my Bills though, because after last week, there were a lot of us Bills fans out here looking suicidal, and it was not a good look. I gotta say, I'm generally a pretty positive, pretty reasonable, pretty laid back type of fan. I mean, when the game's on, I'll foam at the mouth, sure. But generally, I'm reasonable. I make understandable assumptions, and I don't freak out over anything. But being surrounded by Bills fans having a meltdown, thinking that one game is indicative of Josh Allen being, a one-year wonder, a bust. He's coming off of this $258 million contract we just gave him, and suddenly he's bad now. Like that's just not the case. That's not how talented players work in the NFL. You don't blow up in the way that Josh Allen did without having consistent success behind you. And he's still shaky. He's lacking a little confidence. That first game rocked his boat a little bit. But you can see it all over the pitch this week. It was much better, playing against still an incredibly good secondary, with 2 of the highest paid corners in the league right now. And he's coming back. He just needs a little more time to get back in form. And I think by mid-season, as quarterbacks especially do, it's going to take a little time at the start of the year to get there. How many guys have won MVP based off the second week of the season? And how many of them do it because they did great? I mean, Russell Wilson would have 5, 6 MVPs right now if he awarded it that early. Instead, he's got 0 votes all the time, which I love to mention.
Brings up an interesting debate we had a little earlier about if Tua was playing, would it have helped Miami much? I think no. I don't know. Maybe it's because I've just, seen them twice a year for 22 years. I don't really see what it is with Miami that everybody gets like all excited about. But I mean, without him, if they don't have, their left-hander out there, it might be, tough sailing for him.
But okay, so here's the thing though, is that Tua had, I think, 2.5, 3 drives before he got hurt, and he put up 0 points on the board. Jacoby Brissett had the rest of them, and he puts up 0 points on the board. That's a great statistic for me. Those drives didn't go anywhere. I mean, Tua wasn't making first downs. He wasn't throwing the ball into tight coverages downfield. He wasn't doing anything impressive. Jacoby Brissett at least had the veteran sort of experience and the presence of mind to know when to throw the ball away and know when to take the check down and he's just a much more reasonable, average, run of the mill, everyday quarterback, which isn't a problem. But it means that he's not gonna win you a championship. But he's still not. He's gonna be far from. He has a higher floor and lower ceiling than a lot of guys out there, which makes him an ideal backup quarterback because he's not going to lose you that game, and he didn't lose that game. Dolphins were dropping balls all over the place. That defense was suffocating from Buffalo. We got like 6-7 sacks on the day, tons of tackles for loss. It was devastating, and the offense was able to cash in on the great field position they were consistently being awarded, and it was ideal, typical American football. It was great. But Miami was just consistently making mistakes. And if the team around Tua fails, then it doesn't really matter who's playing. But that being said, I don't think Brissett played any worse than Tua was in his time out there.
Can't agree more.
There's another game in the early window today between two AFC East teams that.
Yeah, this is what I wanted.
Okay, so I don't talk as much as a lot of people do on their own podcast. That's how I am.
That shirt.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. Everybody knows how I feel. I didn't really get to talk on Tuesday because not a hero, but I was under the weather. A little better now. If you're a Patriots fan and you watch this game from Mac Jones and this gets you like, okay, if this gets you horny over Mac Jones throwing for like barely 200 yards on what seemed like 2,000 completions, like that really stinks. Like Bill Belichick isn't the same guy he was even 2 years ago. It's a great defense. I'll give you that. There's no real running presence. Now, obviously, you'll be like, that's dumb because Iestyn Harris like ran all over the place last week and then a 26-yard bulldozing attempt this week. But like the offense is going to not be what you think it is. That like people got mad at Derek Carr last week for the way he played. It's how Mac Jones played today. But everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is like the best rookie quarterback of this class. Mac Jones isn't going to cost them, but he's also not going to be that transcendent playmaker that they hope that he will be.
Yeah, he's done what they've asked him to do, but they've asked him to like hold the bag. They've asked him to,
he doesn't have to make the bag.
Fetch the water. He's not doing anything out there. He's just doing the most basic reps over and over again. And maybe Belichick winds up his workload over time, but it all depends on whether or not Belichick actually has faith that he's going to be the franchise guy moving forwards. I know it's too early to tell, but you have to buy in and build a team around your quarterback. Otherwise, he's almost guaranteed to fail. So it depends. I mean, this offense is mediocre at best, but when you have suffocating defense like that, you get the opportunities to put up points. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, Bill Belichick is inarguably one of the best defensive mind of this millennium so far. But I'm not convinced that Mac Jones has it yet. I'm also not convinced yet, despite the evidence, that Zach Wilson doesn't have it yet. I'm not going to say that. I don't think that. I think it's dishonest. He's currently experiencing Sam Darnold syndrome, SDS. It's pretty tragic. But essentially, what happens is you get swallowed up by the Pats defense. You get no help from your team. You're asked to do it all. Make the big throws downfield, go for all the marbles, win them this game. And it's just unfair to a developing quarterback to put that on his shoulders. Build a game plan that supports him and lets him grow and focus on coming back next season, because that's what you're going for if you're the New York Jets right now. And it's what the Patriots should be doing too, but they spent too much money on free agents to justify not trying to compete. These teams aren't going anywhere, but the Jets are going somewhere faster by doing things the way they're doing them.
I mean, I didn't turn that game on until he threw the second pick. It was either the second or the third one. Because honestly, with just me being the awful human being that I am, I just kind of wanted to see him implode. Just because not a lot of people. Where do you go to school at? BYU. I didn't, I'm not the biggest college football fan.
Oh, Wilson, yeah, he was a BYU.
Yeah, so like, I'm not the biggest college football guy, so I really haven't seen him play. I didn't watch him play last week, so I was like, hey, let me see what this kid has. Now, unfortunately for him, he has to go against one of the best defenses in the last 10 years, and you saw that they were just killing him, and obviously some of those weren't his fault. Some of those were just going through receivers' hands. Some of those were just tip drills, and a couple of those were just bad reads. And hopefully he'll get there at some point. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't have faith in him. I don't really have a lot of faith in him, going into the draft, and it's not necessarily his fault. It's just kind of the way he played in college combined with the situation that he ended up going to, because the Jets are probably known as being one of the most dysfunctional teams in the league. Obviously was what they've had going on for the last couple of years. So, I kind of just had that feeling that like this might not work out the way a lot of people think is going to work out. Hopefully it does when they, obviously with them not projecting to be a really good team, they're going to have high draft positions. So they're able to bring in more elite players. And we've seen that the Jets are they're not a top market, but they are able to at least get some free agents in to make that team better. And they actually have now a respective coach in Robert Saleh to take them to the next level and just keep jumping up and up and up to get to where, they're contending. So
yeah,
you
just not to keep piling on the Jets. Yeah, not to keep piling on the Jets here, but they do have a lot of room for growth. And the nice thing about having sort of almost a blank slate that you're working with means you can build it the way you want to build it. And Saleh did some great work this offseason. He brought in some quality free agents. It's a shame we're not going to see Carl Lawson out there, but he's going to be huge for the Jets next year. And Saleh clearly has an image for this team for the future, and I think that he's going to give you as good a chance as any new head coach in the NFL to turn this team around. But you can understand why people have their doubts, have their concerns, and are willing to pull the plug as quickly as possible because they've seen it too many times before. What makes Saleh different? I just think that his discipline and his ability to work with his players is already miles better than guys like Rex Ryan and Adam Gase ever will be.
Todd Bowles.
I know Todd Bowles did some good things with the defense. He should have stayed a defensive coordinator, and I'm glad he is again. Look what he's doing in Tampa Bay right now. It's insane. The guy knows his defense is. I don't think he knows much more than that. Now at least he doesn't have to.
While we're on the topic of football players getting us all horned up, Greg the Leg and Matt Prater with two of the best kicks you'll ever see. Matt Prater's seem to have come from like the Grand Canyon to just totally flatten the Minnesota Vikings, sending them to 0-2. And Greg Zuerlein, the comeback kick, bringing in that SoFi turf with fans, ripping out Charger fans' hearts, yet again. So whoever wants to talk about either one of these games first, go right on ahead.
I could throw this out about the Cowboys. They didn't look like the team that was playing against Tampa Bay last week. They didn't look quite as good. They didn't look as bad either. Their running game existed, but Tony Pollard looks like a better running back than Zeke so far in what we've seen in the past year and a half. But I know that's a strong statement, but it's not entirely untrue. When he's out there, he looks like he contributes much more. That's just the eye test. I haven't taken a look at the stats yet, but that's how it feels. Greg the Leg is an absolute legend. You're 100% correct. This is the kicker's corner after all, but it's time to pay some respect to these guys. He was money from 62 earlier in the game, and then that game winner. You don't get better than that. Meanwhile, other kickers are doing their team a disservice. Take a look at Greg Joseph this week. Far from ideal. He shanked that kick pretty badly for a game winner. But Yeah, it is what it is. I'm encouraged by Dallas on the whole, but they didn't look as good this week as they did against Tampa.
So I will say this is I said this in one of my group chats that with some guys I went to school with. You know, if you don't know, obviously you guys know, but for the listeners, I'm a Washington football team fan, and you know, I've just been raving about this defense this whole summer. And I said, imagine saying a couple months ago that Justin Herbert absolutely dotted the Washington so-called top 5 defense up, but Dallas kind of shut them down. Because you saw those times, you know, Herbert made a couple mistakes. One thing that I've seen a lot of people around the league say is that sometimes Herbert trusts his arm too much, because we all know he has, you know, a cannon, and he thinks he can fit it into those tight windows.
Yeah, the whole arm arrogance theory, right?
Yeah, and like, you know, obviously we've seen that get him. Obviously, it helps him out in many ways, but you know, it's also the whole pros and cons thing. It can get you in trouble in a lot of different ways. And as far as Dallas, their defense is playing way better than I expected them to play. At least this past week. Dak Prescott's still a dog. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of Dallas at this point. I didn't really have too much stock in them to begin with. I mean, they barely lost to Tampa, and they barely. I don't know whether to say they beat the Chargers or the Chargers lost this game. I don't know which one to put, because they both really didn't play all that well.
Yeah, and it came down to that sort of the Chargers were right there with the chance to put it all away and win it. I mean, you know, Greg the Leg wouldn't have been able to kick 4 or 5 points, and they had that chance late, and then they blew it. They got taken way back, and then had to settle. And it's costly mistakes like that on a lot of penalties at exactly the wrong time. They're gonna kill. They're gonna kill a drive. You know, the only people you can't plead with are the refs. You know, you can work on a defense. You know, you can draw up a game plan. But you know, if you hold a dude and the ref says that's holding, then that's holding, and back you go. You can't continue to shoot yourself in the foot like that if you intend to win games.
And as far as the Minnesota Vikings, this team just has bad luck. Like, I don't know what it is. They just can't. Like, they always seem to beat themselves. It's weird. I don't know what it is about them. And Arizona, I still don't know what to make of them. They crushed Tennessee last week, who was able to come back and beat Seattle. But then I don't know. Kyler Murray was just making plays, putting up hella fantasy points. I faced him, pissed me off. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just 2 weird teams that I really don't know what to make of at this point.
Yeah, it's any given Sunday. I mean, some of these teams are they look so unbelievably, unstoppably good, and then they look like absolute garbage. I mean, you know, they put up an unbelievable defensive performance one week, and then the next week someone puts up a 50 on them. You know, suddenly they have a great run game, and then they completely abandon the run game. It's such a mystery at this time of year, and we don't have enough evidence on these teams to really get a feel for who they are yet. I think that Kyler Murray has probably, I mean, right now he's in the MVP conversation. I know it's early, but I'd like to have this conversation early. He's playing like the kind of guy who would win the MVP, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily translate to team success. You put up the big numbers, but your team beats the Vikings by 1 because the Vikings missed a field goal. That's not you winning that game. That's them losing it. You're absolutely right. I think that they need to figure out what their identity as a team is, and either stick to it or adjust it on game day as necessary. Because if they don't, then they're going to continue to be a team that's flashy, that doesn't experience sustained success.
I feel like Kyler Murray, I don't know, he's just getting it. Cliff Kingsbury, everybody was like, oh, this is the year, blah, blah, blah. 3rd year in the system for K1. He totally gets it now. Kind of seems like the world is unlocked for him. And something about that desert air. Athletes like playing in it. I mean, except for like the Diamondbacks and the Coyotes are going to dip. But, I mean, hey. Speaking of dipping, going on down to the team that used to play at Candlestick Park, San Francisco, beat
Mm,
up on, well, I mean, they didn't really beat up on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles kind of shot themselves in the foot. Jimmy Garoppolo kind of did the Jimmy Garoppolo thing, just did barely enough.
mm.
And does this, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people were just trashing the Eagles because it's fun.
It
Jalen
is
Hurts
fun.
didn't play that well. Again, I
Awful.
think we just make fun of Jalen Hurts because it's fun. He
Mm.
didn't play the best today. So was this more of the 49ers doing what they're supposed to, or the Eagles just not playing the way that we thought that they could after week one?
All right, you're going to hear this on my power rankings later on. I'm going to be talking about it when it comes out, probably on Tuesday. But this 49ers seem to play to the level of their opposition. I mean, they were destroying Detroit last week, and Detroit almost came back to win it. They barely squeaked past the Eagles, who are definitely a subpar team. And you know that they've got the Packers next week for week 3. And I have a weird feeling they're going to hang with them all game 2, whether they win or lose. But if you're a good team, you got to be a good team. I mean, you can't adjust your game plan to play to the level of your opposition unless that's a step up. That's you're not gonna you don't get a 6-point lead and then hold it for 3.5 quarters. That's just not how you play successful American football. It's foolish. They got a great, they're supposed to have a great run game, but they can't run consistently. They're supposed to have a franchise quarterback who can't throw all the time. They're supposed to have a non-stop, this unstoppable defense that's going to blow you up, both on the defensive line and in what is usually a pretty good secondary. But right now, their front seven are doing all the work. Their back four mediocre, and I'd be kind of shocked to see them still competing for this division as of week 15, 16. Because it's the Rams and the Cardinals and the Seahawks and the Niners. And, 7 wins, 1 loss in the NFC West so far this season. And Seattle, they don't look like the worst team in the division to me. I'm not sure if they are, but I feel like they might be better than San Francisco.
So I have a lot of stock in San Francisco because I've gone on record saying that this roster is better than the Super Bowl roster. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of them getting out of their own way. I mean, they do have a lot of injuries, like Raheem Mostert was out for the season. Sherman, their other running back, his first carry, I think he got a concussion or he was in concussion protocol. And I'm pretty sure their other running back, Mitchell, at some point, he hurt his knee or something like that. So it's just like a lot of injuries to, certain positions. I feel like they're going to get better because they just have too much talent, and their coaching staff is too, good to, eventually be the worst team in this division again. If they stay healthy, I can see them or the Rams winning it. It's just it's too early. It's almost like you can't take too much stock in a team that's playing really that's not playing bad, but they're not playing to their full potential, and you can't really take too much stock in a team or a player that's playing way above their norm. You just gotta eventually it's going to balance out, and the good teams are going to get good, and the bad teams or players are going to end up, regressing to what we know them to be.
So you're saying don't buy in on the Cardinals, don't buy out on the Niners, don't buy into the Panthers, don't buy out on the Packers.
So yeah, I was don't sell your stock on the Packers. The Panthers, they're not as bad as what the record last year showed. I feel like they personally upgraded at quarterback, so that's one thing that I feel like they have going for them. Second year in Matt Rule's system, so I would buy into them. I wouldn't buy into Arizona because once again, like I said last time I was on here, you saw the end up collapsing later on in the season. We just got to wait to see can they keep up this success and this winning. And San Fran, yes, I would definitely buy into it because, like I said, way too much talent to be playing as bad as they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good place to end it. Deontay's been known to be wrong, though, so maybe let's not take all our stock into him.
You're a Jets, Knicks, and Mets fan. Your life is a joke.
It's what I tell myself before I cry myself to sleep.
I just spilled my sunflower seeds.
I mean, that's okay.
Retribution.
That's God telling me to be nice. Sorry, Stephen.
We'll be back on Tuesday talking about, what's going on in the NFL after all the games been played, after all the ice baths have melted. I'm just saying, if Ian Book gets in a game this year, I might not. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, sportswave.net, Kickers Corner, Iestyn's Power Rankings, Garrett Cowdrey's got some pick'ems and whatnot. I know like what he does. Like I know it's a pick'em or something, right?
Yeah, he does these. He does picks and predictions, like a summary of what to expect in the game. We also have Preston doing Preston's picks. You can check it out on our store. You can pick the games each every Monday, Tuesday. Pick the games for the next week, and you go up against him, see if you can pick better than he can.
Yeah, so that's it. What does Deonta do, you ask? He just brings up his mildly lukewarm takes in the chat a year later. All right,
Matt Ryan sucks.